Eddie. Hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. We've got a big show this week. Thank you so much for joining us. We're back after a bit of a Thanksgiving break. Hope that you and yours feasted well and were stuffed with gratitude and turkey and potatoes and all that stuff. This week, we've got a few important stories to talk about. Kentucky breaking political news stories. We've got Michael Adams. We're going to talk about Andy Beshear. We're going to talk about Representative Josie Raymond. And then we have got a wonderful guest queued up for you, Anna Whites, election attorney Anna Whites. If you don't know Anna Whites, you need to know her. She's a very, I think, just very intentional and thoughtful and compassionate election attorney who really helps a lot of nonprofits do important work and is very committed to making our state better electorally. So we're going to talk to her about some of her work, get some tips and some thoughts about moving forward into the next election cycle, because it starts again immediately, folks. All right, so those are the stories. We'll lead out with a kind of finalize the show with a call to action, encouraging folks to get and stay engaged and support the groups that matter to you this week. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to do it in under an hour. Mark my words, people, in under an hour. But first, encouraging folks to help support efforts to make Kentucky purple. We just did have an election. We are not going to promise that we're turning Kentucky blue anytime soon after the results we saw. Yes, won re-election, but if you recall, he was the only Democrat that won statewide, and it wasn't terribly close for some of the others, unfortunately. So it really does show we've got some structural work to address here in Kentucky, but Progress Kentucky is committed to doing the work, whether communications or grassroots organizing, everything we can do to help ensure better electoral outcomes for our commonwealth. And you should join us. You should support us beyond logging in, downloading the show, however you're interacting with this time together. You should make a donation and join our election campaigns. We would love to have your support in any way you choose to offer it. But now let's go ahead and check in with our co-hosts. Let us know who you are, where you are, what does your protest sign say today? And you on the internet, you should do it too. You can put your protest sign in the chat or in the comments section and while we're sharing ours. I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from Childsburg, a lovely community, a sea of beige siding on the outskirts of Lexington. And my sign, what am I protesting today? I don't know. The cold? Does that make sense? No, I'm not going to protest the cold. It's winter. It's nice to have a little bit of cold, or it's late fall. But as we get closer to December, I guess we need to be ready for these types of chilly mornings. I am going to say I am protesting money in politics. That continues to be something that I just frustrates me to no end. It's not just because I was hit up by a few different politicians today to make a donation. I just think we spend too much money on elections. And so the more elections become who can raise the most money, the more we're kind of average citizens are kind of cut out from it. And also just the more time that politicians have to spend raising money and the less time they have to be responsive to their constituents and addressing important issues of public policy. So that's not a very catchy sign. So I'm going to go back to stop legalized bribery, campaign finance reform now. That's me. So, all right, let's check in with our co-host, Kimberly Cecil Jones. So nice to see you. How are you doing this fine
So nice to
day?
see you too, Aaron. Truly missed you. But you know what? You're right. I just want to just say a couple of words to kind of piggyback on what you said as far as the money. And when we know how much money has been raised for certain elections, you just have to say to yourself, couldn't that money have been used to feed the hungry, house the homeless, and so on and so forth, and put money back into our education systems? So I do understand it shouldn't be about money when you're trying to run. It should be about the people, the community, I believe. But my protest sign is really like, um, I'm going to say let's, and Aaron, you say go. Because now that Andy is officially our governor, we're going to
Go,
let's,
go.
exactly. And I'm coming to you live from Louisville, Kentucky, home of the Kentucky Derby.
Fantastic. All right, so yeah, I'm into it. Let's go for sure. Let's go into the news of the week. We got some important stories to cover. I think I've got the first story. Wanted to talk about a wide-ranging interview that Secretary of State Michael Adams gave with the Herald Leader, talking about the kind of his views of how the campaign was run by his dear friend Daniel Cameron. And I think he does a lot of work in this interview, basically, cleaning up after the horribly run Cameron campaign. Says that it was well done, and that he worked really hard. But says that the GOP message got hijacked by sideshow attractions. He said, but he blamed outside spending groups for fueling that work, and the problem with that is it does ignore the reality of Dan Cameron and some of his opening remarks making those sideshow attractions central to his campaign. So the fact that he wanted to talk about trans issues as early as Fancy Farm and that Michael Adams is up there cheering him on, really does look to do a little revisionist history of this campaign. So man-child Michael Adams, I think he is absolutely mischaracterizing the campaign, because he's quoted as saying, "I think what Daniel showed us is he ran one of the best campaigns I've ever seen in terms of being out there, being everywhere, very hard work, very appealing candidate, very articulate." I always say, it's so funny, white politicians always say that about black politicians. Very articulate, very inspiring. But you've seen now the lowest performing candidate vote share for the Republican Party decline repeatedly in the gubernatorial election year. I think that's a warning sign, says Michael Adams. And Michael Adams, of course, who very strategically included pictures of Andy Bashir in his campaign ads, so was definitely going for that crossover vote. And I think got it, unfortunately. So he was the top vote getter statewide, right? So he definitely peeled off some Andy Bashir support, and strategically positioned himself. After he kind of made it through the primary, he kind of had the Republican vote locked up, pretended to be a very bipartisan individual, which it's not really that impressive to be the most bipartisan Republican in Kentucky, given how it's been politically managed by the Republican Party, which is mostly looking to stop every single thing the governor ever wants to do. So yeah, it's like faint praise, but he spent a lot of time encouraging folks to think of him as bipartisan. This is a guy who is, of course, in election. He's a campaign attorney for Nikki Haley, Like he's got his side hustle, right? He continues to work for very right-wing Republicans in terms of getting billable hours, while he's also the Secretary of State for Kentucky, which it's a little bit odd that he decides he needs a side hustle for a job that pays pretty well with our tax dollars. But I think what he really wants is to continue to be engaged with the hard right factions of the Republican Party and collect those checks for his legal work. I don't know. That's my take on Michael Adams. Kimberly, I don't know what your thoughts are about the guy and about how he's positioning himself. It seems pretty obvious if you read the interview. The guy is going to be governor, wants to be governor rather, and has positioned himself to get as many Andy Beshear voters as possible, not just when they're on the same ballot, but when he is running to replace him in 4 years. What do you think, Kimberly?
I I don't have a lot of problems with Michael Adams. I know he has spoken out before about some of the election things that were going on, calling out even our own county clerk here in Jefferson County, Bobby Holzclaw, who is a Republican. However, will he be able to be governor? That's the question. And so, let's just get into it. No, he will not be governor unless he does something so magnificent. He works hand in hand with something, a project that is dear to our great governor, Andy Beshear. Otherwise, people keep saying that, but is that really going to happen? We got 4 years to find out. So I don't think that he'll actually get the governorship. Don't have a lot of problems with Michael Adams and him, trying to get some side hustle money. I think everybody's trying to find a side hustle right now. And I just believe that in our world today, most things are a money grab. It's like money talk and bull crap walks, right?
Well, I think just because you and I could use a side hustle, we're not paid. All right, and I should know this, and I'm sorry I didn't look this up ahead of time. How much he's paid? My hunch is it's well over 100 grand to do a full-time job. Not just paid to do a job, but paid taxpayer dollars to do that job. And he is, monkeying around with Republican candidates. He's supporting horrible right-wing politicians in Missouri. Helping to do their legal work. If you look at the interview, he like there's no logic in how he defends his efforts to continue to work for Nikki Haley at the same time he's supposed to be the arbiter of elections. Well, she's going to be on the Republican primary ballot in Kentucky, right? Because they're going to have the Republican, unless she drops out because Trump is won it outright and there's not an actual contested race. But theoretically she will be on the ballot. Yet he's the guy who's like the neutral arbiter of who's running for elections in Kentucky. So I don't know. It just seems weird to me that he's clearly got a favorite in the Republican primary, and he's going to be the one who's helping to run the Republican primary for Kentucky.
Do you really think that if a person works on a campaign and they're actually getting paid, do you really think that all of them are for that candidate?
I mean, I don't know what's in their heart of hearts. I don't really care. It's like a clear conflict of interest. If you are being paid by a candidacy in a campaign, and you're having some supposedly neutral role in the kind of management of elections, that just seems like a total conflict of interest to me. So whether he loves her or not, or wants to would go to the wall for her, it doesn't really matter. He's getting paid by her, so that is a conflict. At least as my
You think so?
non-lawyer mind.
Maybe I don't feel that way because there are some county chair people that work on campaigns during the primaries and for the general election. So
yeah, but they're not paid by tax
we're
dollars.
doing it in our own party. So
they're not being paid by tax dollars to be the neutral arbiter of those elections. it's like, but it's a conflict, and they need to like make sure that it's very clear. Like, yes, I'm doing this as a private individual, not as the whatever of the whatever. But yeah,
And
I don't know.
can you really separate the two?
It's a good point. It's a good point. Maybe they shouldn't be doing that. Maybe these people
Right,
should be taking
exactly.
a step back and not being engaged in elections if you've got a leadership position in the party that is, that has the election going on. All right, so that's Michael Adams. TB, we'll be back. We'll talk about Michael Adams more. But I know that you had a story you wanted to cover a little closer to home for you, the political scene in Louisville. What is going on? What's the breaking news?
Well, actually, Aaron, everybody's talking about P. Diddy. No, I'll just play with you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, you need to look it up. I'm pretty sure you do. But no, here in Jefferson County, I know Josie Raymond. She's one of our state representatives right now. Wonderful woman, actually cares about the community, not so much about the title and the power or anything of that nature. She's really grassroots, and deserves the position that she has. However, it has gotten to be a lot for her, being in the state. Um, up there in Frankfort. She just feels like she's not able to really make a difference because the super majority, and they are super majority, the Republicans are not allowing anybody to really be heard or even considering any of the bills that come up from Democrats. So Josie, with the redistricting, Mary Lou Marzan used to be our one of our state representatives coming out of Jefferson County, and I remember she did a presser, and she was basically saying that she was going to step back because she didn't want to run against Josie. So, they have stuck together, and Mary Lou Marzin is saying that, she really wasn't ready to give up her position, and she knew she had more work to do. Although Mary Lou Marzin had been in a state rep for over 3 decades. So, what's going to happen at this point is Josie, she's going to be running for city council here in Louisville, and she's just more connected because our council gets so many things done, things that Frankfort won't even do for the state. Our council here in Louisville, Kentucky, gets together and makes it happen at the city level. So Josie really feels like she can contribute more, that she can do more for the constituency, um, and she would be heard and get something done. And I'm sure that it feels some type of way to really give it your all when you really care about the communities. You really care about people and you want changes, positive changes in their lives, and you are unable to do anything. You're stopped at every turn. So, normally they used to say, Aaron, that it was like a step by step procedure, and meaning like you would be a city council person first, then you would move and become a state representative, and then from there, you probably may or may not become a state senator. And then from there, run for U.S. Congress, run for U.S. Senate, and maybe even the presidency. So it's a little different. Some call it going backwards. But, it doesn't matter what other people call it. It's only important how Josie feels about it and what she can exactly get done for her constituency. And so I'm so on board with it. What about you, Aaron?
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think it's a step backwards. I think there's a great Kentucky Lantern article about it that has her quoted as saying, after years on defense, I'm ready to play offense, which I think makes a lot of sense. How frustrating is it? I mean, and I have said this to, I think, each and every candidate we've had on this show who wants to go to Frankfurt. Like, what? Now, what? Tell me why exactly you want to go to Frankfurt. And I'm glad there's lots of people who do, because we need good people there. But it is like, there's a currently super duper GOP majority that kind of gets to assert their will. And, the only time Democrat votes really matter is when the Republicans are fighting and they don't agree, but they try to run that that group so that doesn't happen, right? So it's got to be very frustrating. And she said, when Frankfurt wouldn't pass my paid leave for state employees bill, Louisville did it for city employees. When Frankfurt wouldn't pass my bill to find and mitigate the lead eating our kids' brains, Louisville did. Help's not coming immediately from the state when it comes to crucial Louisville issues like gun violence and housing first solutions to homelessness. My hometown must continue to lead to become the thriving, inclusive city we all know it can be. So, yeah, totally makes sense. Like, that totally makes sense to me, that you'd rather be there doing stuff that matters and, like, leading from the front, as opposed to this rearguard action trying to stop horrible things from the GOP super duper majority in Frankfurt. So, yeah, more power to you. I mean, I think we'll miss you in Frankfurt for sure. But it sounds like Mary Lou Marzian had a term off and is ready to line up. I think she's registered for that seat again. So, at least we'll have some good experience for sure. So, and it's a safe seat, right? So it's not like it does anything to affect that super duper majority. I'll put that in any of the Democratic gains in jeopardy. So, yeah, I don't know. It seems like a smart move, honestly, and she's probably gonna have a less frustrating time in her kind of legislative life over the next few years.
However, we still need people to fight for us at the state level. So, coming from Jefferson County, we still have Nima Kankari. We still have uh, Daniel Grossberg. We still have Colonel Pam. We still have Katura Heron. We still have what is that young lady's name? She's right here in Jefferson County. Is her name Robin? Oh, I can't remember her name. She's the youngest one in the as a representative. I can't remember. She's so sweet. She's such a nice young lady, and just a breath of fresh air. And also, the only person that I saw yesterday that had filed their paperwork, they do have until January the 5th. So anyone who's interested in running for office, you have until January the 5th. And I do know that Representative Beverly Chester Burton has put in her paperwork and registered for to run again for state representative. Which
Yeah,
I
I'm
got some
looking
ideas about that. I got some real ideas about that.
about what exactly?
Well, a lot of times we don't say what we need to work on as a party, as a people, when you're talking about the Democratic Party. Um, I live actually in the 44th district, and absolutely nothing. You hear other districts, their state rep is having these town halls. Their state reps are readily available. Their state reps are doing things for the community. And those of us in the 44th district here in Jefferson County, nothing. It's crickets.
So that's Beverly Chester Burton,
Yeah, you
who should be
remember
hearing the
her.
shots. Who should be hearing the shots fired right now? Is that what you're saying?
I'll tell her to her face, because if you want to keep your position, that's what it's about. You have to do something. Even Colonel Pam, who can't really get anything done up there in Frankfort, or Katura, or any of the many people that we do know in the House of Representatives there in Frankfort, still they're doing things to make a difference. They do have somewhat of budgets to come back in their districts and do things to improve. However, a lot of people here are still upset because Beverly Chester Burton was mayor of Shively, which is a little town inside of the city. We got lots of those. And she was the mayor. And you remember, she was the mayor that, I mean, they knew about this all across the country, where she was drunk and she was in the White Castle line and she was asleep. And then she kind of like sped off and she hit this truck and hit a pole and got locked up. But she's never said, I apologize to the constituency. And you remember how she got into office. Do you remember how she
Um,
got into office?
I don't remember how she got into office. It was not. Was it a
Because
poll
Joni
at the White Castle
Jenkins,
line?
beyond that, Joni Jenkins was my state representative. Excellent job, readily available. She would have breakfasts and town halls, and she had a presence within our district. Most definitely, she was excellent. However, as you all know, Joni was on TV doing, because everybody's like, how could you? What are you doing? And she had talked to Beverly Chester Burton, like, do you know anyone that would possibly be interested in running for state rep? And Beverly allegedly, I'm saying all of this is alleged because I was not sitting there. I'm just going
Okay.
by what they have said in interviews, which can be readily found very quickly. um, Beverly said, I can. And so nobody knew. And the last day to file, Beverly Chester Burton went downtown to the Board of Elections and took her name off of running for mayor again of Shively. And she rode down to Frankfort, paid the $200. And she was just like, by default, our state representative, because like, it's very rare that anybody wants to run against Joni Jenkins. And so,
Hmm.
there were nobody else had an opportunity to have that seat.
Well,
So,
yeah, that seems problematic on a number of levels, and I won't say that it's just Beverly Chester Burton who took advantage of that situation. It's like, why did Joni Jenkins not make an announcement about it? And I get there's some like, I don't know, served your time, kind of ready for that next step. Like, I am in favor of more democracy, not less. Let's have a contested primary. Let's have an actual contest. Let's people, share their ideas, show their like track record of delivering and showing up and working hard, and maybe not passing out in the White Castle line. But yeah, so I'm with you on that for sure, and it should not be an insider game. Obviously, if you hear like, oh, somebody's gonna retire or not going to seek reelection, that does open things up because it's tough to run against an incumbent. But it's not to say that you shouldn't do it if you think you've got cause. If you think the incumbent isn't up to the job, then run against them, and compete. But yeah, I again, my earlier diatribe about how much it costs to run for office, I can see why people would rather just like, hey, let's just manage it. And so we don't have to run some big, huge, expensive campaign and fundraise a ton. But then it's like people are kind of shut out of the process and it doesn't feel very transparent, doesn't feel very authentically democratic. So yeah, there's no easy answers here, but I generally feel like more democracy is better than less, as a general rule of thumb. Because I'm not a Republican, where democracy is apparently not really a requirement moving forward. All right, let's do the third story, and then we have got an awesome guest, and we need to get to her. But I think it's really important to point out that there was a story in the New York Times. We've got a link we're going to share. It's, I think, a gift link. So if you've hit your 10 article limit at the New York Times, you can go ahead and click through and read this one. Not now, because we're talking about it, but you can read it later. So Democrats are planning to spend millions of dollars on a few state legislative elections in Kansas, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Kentucky. States where they have little to no chance of winning control of a chamber, right? We know there's no way that no matter how much money you spend in Kentucky, that we're going to flip Frankfort, in 2 years, right? That's just, it's not, or a year rather, that's not going to happen. But they are trying to break up Republican supermajorities in states with Democratic governors to win back the veto pen district by district. Of course, in Kentucky, that's challenging. Right now, there are, of the 100 state house seats, the Republicans have 80, Democrats have 20. So you're going to have to flip a fair amount to get much of a change in power dynamics. So basically, they need to flip 21 seats to break up the supermajority, which would, more than double their caucus. But there's all sorts of reasons that this seems doable, right? We just won. Governor Andy Beshear just won re-election. There are, multiple seats where it's held by a Democrat, but if you look at the actual vote count, Andy Beshear won that district. Those should be competitive districts. Those theoretically should be competitive districts. And I think the more, the merrier. Again, my earlier point, more democracy. We should be competing in all those districts for sure. And I would be excited to, write $5 checks to each and every one of them to support them however I can. But they're probably, if we're competing in 40 to get the ones we need, I can't write 40 $50 checks. I just can't do that. That's not going to happen. But I think there's a lot of interest right now in our political process. I think this election really put a few key issues firmly on display, one of them being abortion, right? So that was one of the determining, I think, issues of this election, was that Andy Beshear, cared passionately about a woman's right to choose, and exemptions for rape and incest, and had that phenomenal young woman who was so brave to step up and be in that ad and tell her story about being a minor and being raped by her stepfather. Like, that really, really, I think, hit Dan Cameron hard, and he didn't know how to respond, and responded poorly every single time he talked about it. And couldn't get a straight answer about what he would do about an exemption for their abortion ban in Kentucky. So here's the thing. The Democratic governor can't do anything about the abortion ban in Kentucky. Who can do something about it would be the legislature. So I think connecting that issue to every single state house race is a very clear, this is how we can make some gains if people understand. It's challenging because these issues or these races are so much lower profile than the governor's race, where they've got money and they're running TV ads. These state house races, you probably won't be on TV. They might, but with digital ads, I think you can really kind of narrowcast through the interwebs to really get to your district and tell that story and show up and show out for for abortion rights. And it's been proven to be a very, very important winning issue for Democrats around the country. In a state like Ohio, right, that is very hard pressed to for a Democrat to win statewide, they have come out again and again on abortion rights. We came out on abortion rights, and then Dan Cameron absolutely ignored the will of the voters. So I think this is something that needs to be prioritized in terms of these state house races, and could, especially with some DLC money, DLCC money helping support these races, we could win some significant gains. We're not going to get the veto pen back in Governor Beshear's hands. I mean, he'll have it, and that'll be awesome. And he'll be able to vent his spleen and veto some things. And then it goes back to the state house, and they have a simple majority required to overturn a governor veto, which is really offensive and really unfortunate. So I don't think we're ever going to get that threshold, or get that threshold anytime soon. But it's definitely something that we can at least break up that super majority. Anyway, sorry about that. That went a little longer than I intended. Kimberly, thoughts about that and these dumping more federal money, state or national money into Kentucky races? Are you excited about that? Do you want to see that?
Of course, we need all the money that we can get. If they've got some, yeah, give it to us so we can maybe do something. However, I think it's just gone on too long, and we have to, those of us that are Democrats, we have to take some blame for where we are right this minute, because we need to stay on point. Our talking points need to be the same. Where we're going, the goals need to be the same. And those Republicans, they snuck in on us. Why? because sometimes we get lax and we don't think it's going to happen to us. But here we are in Trump's country. Can you believe it? People still, I don't get it. But the simplest of things. Even the women Republicans there in Frankfort are not even trying to root and support women as a whole. Uh, we don't need to be told by people what we need to do with our bodies. We have doctors for that. Last time I checked, um, making all of these um, wanting to do things to people. And as I said this before, and I didn't try to prophesy this or anything, but it just is what it is. As my son Denzel likes to say, when something's going on, he's always saying, well, Mom, it is what it is. Well, it appears to me that they want to keep us uneducated, sick, and poor. So maybe at this particular time, there's some type of strategic plan in place to try to turn some of those seats in Frankfurt. And even on the local level, I know here in Louisville next year, there's going to be some races that are going to be the ones to watch because they're running against some Republicans in certain areas that are known to be red right here in Jefferson County. So, I wish they would have done this and sent a lot of money a long time ago, but I don't know the reason for it right now. Could it be because our governor is moving to bigger pastures in 2028?
Well, I think they definitely see the value of helping Democratic governors out, right? So I think that's the primary motivation for this kind of federal move to support these states where there are Democratic governors in bright red states that have been, a lot of them have been gerrymandered. There's like all sorts of reasons why a Democrat's winning statewide, but that's clear, like that doesn't make sense. Why would they elect a Democratic governor statewide, but have these super majorities in the legislature? That, like, the math shouldn't work out that way. But clearly gerrymandering has played a role, and other things in Kentucky. But it's interesting, right? Because in a year, the electorate will look a lot different than the one that just reelected Andy Beshear, right? The turnout's huge compared to what we just saw, and that means you've got these kind of lower propensity voters, and that means, I don't know, the Trump voters are going to show up in a way they didn't show up in this race, and that might make things harder. It would make things harder, if Trump's on the ballot, which seems like, no matter what Michael Adams is doing to support Nikki Haley, it seems like the trend line here is that Trump is going to be the nominee for the Republican Party again, and this is a state that went for him by 26 points last time. So the fact that Andy won by 5 points this last election, it seems like it's not a lock that just because a district went for Andy Beshear, it would go for a Democrat in the state house. But it's worth trying. Like, you can't just throw up your hands, So I'm excited. Especially, it's not my money. I don't give money to the DLCC. Bring that money in here and let's see what we can do with it. All right. So we've got to move on because we're late, and I apologize. But Anna Whites is going to be joining us now. Anna Whites is an election attorney. Last time we had her on, I think, to talk about the redistricting lawsuit. Somebody who is an ardent opponent of gerrymandering and is a good government, I think, election attorney, and also, in the interest of full disclosure, is our attorney and helps us to, she helps us stay out of trouble. Thankfully, we're a very low budget nonprofit, but she makes sure that we are, doing the work we need to do. At least whenever we ask her what we need to do, she tells us the right stuff. So, Anna, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for giving up some of your evening to chat with us about the politics of Kentucky. I know you're a very passionate observer and very engaged in a lot of different issues and a lot of different levels. So welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I've enjoyed listening to you go back and forth all evening.
Usually there's a third to moderate the Kimberly and Aaron show, and I feel like that's always just good for informed discourse to have a third person in here to balance us out. But yeah, thanks so much for doing this. And I know you're passionate about a number of different elements of our electoral process. But I wanted to just check in on that redistricting lawsuit. So there's been some guidance since the last time you were on. SCOTUS did not actually screw things up further, which is kind of impressive. But there's been some guidance on gerrymandering, and I wonder if there's a chance that that decision, which absolutely upset things in Alabama, I think it's having impacts in Louisiana, maybe Texas. Is there a chance that decision could assist Kentucky's efforts to correct the, as I said, electoral dysfunction afflicting our maps?
I would love that, but I don't see it. I think the Supreme Court has very much looked at not just the gerrymandering, and I think we can all agree there was horrendous partisan gerrymandering in Kentucky, ugly maps. But the Supreme Court has really looked at what states are requiring in their specific constitutions and how they prohibit or permit redistricting, moving around maps, gerrymandering, and whether partisanship is expressly prohibited, as it was in some of these states, or whether there's a little more leeway. And the Franklin Circuit judge who made the initial ruling in our redistricting case in Kentucky said, yes, clearly partisan gerrymandering, clearly it was improper, but the Kentucky Constitution doesn't prohibit that. And in a case like this, a state constitution is probably going to prevail unless there's some additional wrinkle. Like in Florida, the case is really arguing that the lines were drawn solely on race-based issues. They were trying to do away with any black district. And so that makes a difference. That leaves us in a position where it's actually racist behavior. And every constitution, federal one, controls all of them and says you can't do that. I wish that in Kentucky that would really help us, but in our case, it was just partisanship, and they're going to allow that to prevail and carry on, in my opinion.
So you're telling me that this map, which has, is it the first district that stretches from Paducah all the way to Frankfort, that's a legal district?
I don't see anything that makes it illegal. It's ridiculous. It's improper. It's partisan. But my experts, who are much smarter than I am, and a number of other national experts, all looked at it and said, we don't like it. It's clearly ugly, but we don't think that it is illegal.
Partisan, but not racist. That's the line that SCOTUS has walked for us, huh?
It's a difficult line to walk, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. I that's what I had thought or what I'd heard, but I was just holding out hope that maybe you could bring some good news here. But no, I guess we'll just have to deal with that for now.
Right. Lawyers are pessimists. You're asking the wrong person if you want sunshine and rainbows. I tell everyone they're going to lose, and then if they lose, they're prepared. And then if they win, they're very excited. So that's my plan here.
Awesome. Kimberly, what's your question?
Is P. Diddy going to go to jail, Miss Annabel? No, I'm just playing with you. I know everybody's heard about P. Diddy, but anyway.
Hot topic.
No, I do have a legitimate question for you. And one I have for Aaron as well. Like, what do you know about ED? Anyway, we just discussed the top... If I could get it out, Miss Hannah White. We just discussed the top vote getter on election day, which was Michael Adams, our Secretary of State. And clearly one of the reasons he got more votes than our great governor is that he had strong support, of course, from the Republican Party. And we're thinking that he probably got some Democratic votes as well. So do you think those crossover votes, like those Democrats, was that warranted? And who were they?
It's hard to say who they were. They were definitely crossover votes, both in both the Beshear race and in the Adams race. And I think that those were aided by the fact that Beshear and Adams appeared together frequently and seemed to be friendly, if not friends. And so people, Democrats in particular, feel comfortable with Michael Adams. He's outgoing, he's smiley. It's very easy to forget the points that Aaron was bringing up earlier about who he works for and with, which are generally folks who don't follow the ideals and the ideas that our Democratic platform tries to advance of equality and equity and women's rights and gender rights. The big problem I have with Michael Adams, and the reason I hope that people start asking harder questions, is back under our former Secretary of State, the vote purges were probably not done enough. And those vote purges are done at the county clerk level to take dead people and people who've moved off the rolls. Well, Michael Adams started really purging. Prior Secretary of State had some questions about this and raised issues showing that some of the purging was incorrect. They were purging people who should not have been removed from the rolls. And so we filed a lawsuit on behalf of the Democratic Party on that and many other issues. And we asked, are you doing internal audits? Anyone who works with data or computers know if you're going to be changing the data, purging some of the data, you want to do internal audits very regularly, probably monthly, and make sure that those purges are being done appropriately. To date, and the suit has never been dismissed, Adams and the State Board of Elections have not been able to respond to us and show that there are any internal audits, that the purges are being done appropriately. And so when Adams walks around and says, boy, I'm cleaning up your voter rolls, we hope that is being done in a careful and appropriate way, but I don't have any proof that that's the case. And given his outside job, his side hustle, as you were saying, I have serious concerns about his motive, the way he's conducting himself, what he's doing in his taxpayer-funded job, and what he's doing outside that. And I agree with Kimberly. There's a question when anyone in a position of political power is doing a side hustle related to politics. I think if you are elected to office, you need to do that office in a bipartisan way, in a forthright way, in a transparent way. And I don't see the transparency I want in an elected official from Michael Adams.
Thank you, Anna. And I also want to point out that I did do some Googling. It's $129,000, $375 that Michael Adams is paid in taxpayer funds for his job. That's a year. That's not for the full 4 years. That's a year. So that's a full-time job, which I would argue shouldn't leave him a lot of time for the side hustle of helping right-wing Republicans, defend their interests. So the guy is a partisan hack. He worked for the Republican Governors Association before he, became this, bastion of bipartisanship, right? So the guy is not at all bipartisan. He is absolutely, yeah. So, but yeah, it was. I'm confounded because maybe even some of the viewers and listeners of this show, kind of thought man, he and Andy worked so well together. Yeah, for that 1 minute when there was a pandemic, they did a few things to make voting better. They clawed back most of those things, as soon as they could. And Michael Adams has not been a staunch advocate of increased access to the polls. We got a little bit of early voting more than we had before because what we had before was horrible, and now it's
but we lost our local precincts. We lost a lot of the transparency. We lost a lot of the ability for mail-in ballots, and we're still one of the more repressive states. So yes, we celebrate those early voting days, and that's fantastic. The rest of it has been a tragic loss, particularly for our voters who struggle to drive across Louisville or across a very big county for an hour or two and then stand in line, particularly if you have an hourly job where they don't let you off or you have to pay for childcare the whole time. He's made access much harder other than those few early voting days.
There we go. And she is an election attorney, so she knows this stuff. She is our expert today, and thank you so much for for coming on and sharing that. We what putting Michael Adams aside, what lessons do you think Democrats should take from Andy Beshear's victory? How do you think the candidates can put his successful messaging to work for gains in the state house in 2024? You were listening to our conversation about that DLCC money, maybe coming in to help in some state house races, help to shave off that super duper majority into just a super majority, or maybe even just a majority. What do you think we should learn and candidates should learn from what Andy did successfully?
I think what Andy did very successfully, other than the millions of dollars and that we all knew him, was be very present. He was everywhere in the state, particularly in areas that have voted blue. And that's why we saw a lot of blue counties or red counties lean blue, or at least have a lot more Democratic voters, because he went and saw people. And on both sides of the aisle, we see in the polling and the data, it really matters to people if you come see them. And Andy really demonstrated that for all our candidates. It's not good enough to show up once a year, once every 2 years and say, hey, remember me, vote for me, and leave. You need to be present. You need to be touching that county. You need to be speaking to the county party chairs and saying, I'm coming into your county next week, or I'm coming into your city next week. Let's have an event. Let's have a luncheon, gather some people at a diner, whatever it is the candidates want to do. So the big lesson was be present. Go see the people. Don't expect them to vote for you just because you're a Democrat. And with Andy and with us, other candidates, Colonel Pam, for example, there was a strong message of I am who I am. And voters can recognize, in most cases, artificiality. And voters want to see people who are saying, this is what I am, this is what I do, and I want to listen to you and what you need and take that in, make it part of who I am. So I'm telling voters, really be true to yourself. You know you're going to get that question about abortion. You know gender issues are going to be raised. You know race is a huge issue in Kentucky. Know that's coming. Have your answers and then move on. Also talk about other platforms and be true to yourself. Don't haver around. Don't try and hide from hard questions. Answer them quickly, answer them crisply, make a big smile, and move forward and be yourself. And I'm telling candidates and even county parties, wear your Democratic shirt all the time. And while I would love everyone to do it literally, figuratively do it. Every time you do something good, every time you clean up the roadway, every time you stuff a child's backpack for an after-school meal, say, I am doing this and I am a Democrat. Democrats care about you. Democrats are one with you. And that's what the showing up also does. It says, I'm with you. We are one. We are friends. We are together. So I think candidates need to really be present, really be active and out there, and be very true to themselves in their messaging. And I'm with whoever it was. Maybe it was you, Aaron, saying primaries. I don't care if it's an incumbent. I don't care if we've said so-and-so needs, it's their turn, they need this race. As an election attorney, I love primaries because they vet both candidates. And whoever survives will be a much stronger, cleaner, better candidate. And if you don't think you can win and that's an unwinnable Republican seat, run anyway. Because sometimes people retire for various reasons at the last minute. And if we don't have anyone in that race, we've given up a seat for no good reason. So I'm telling folks, stuff the ballot. I want 10 people running for every race, locally and on up. And I'm working with counties to make sure they know how to make that possible. I'm not sure a lot of the DCCC money is going to trickle down to your Eastern Kentucky races. But if it does, awesome. But if it doesn't, let's put local plans in place to help people run.
I love that idea. I feel like it's hard to recruit for a suicide mission, right? So like, because it takes a lot to run. And I hate to be like the nattering nabob of negativity here, but it's like, it takes the time away from the thing you just said. You got to show up, you got to be there, you got to and if you've got zero clear path to make it competitive, it's awfully hard to ask people to do that, I think.
It is a very difficult thing to ask folks to do but we need to remember to tell them, we need to remember to support them. We need to bring in somebody to babysit your kids and a mechanic to fix up your car and do what the Republicans do and help candidates find part-time jobs so they can afford to run. And we need to run with them, not just say, oh, look, Bob's running. Good luck, Bob.
Yeah.
Canvas, hit the trail. But we also need to tell these candidates what you're doing is building name recognition for yourself and the party. You're doing some deep canvassing. You're getting information about what the voters are thinking and feeling. And you're getting the opportunity to change precinct by precinct how counties vote. I tell the story of Dustin Burley, who is Black and gay and very outspoken in super red Anderson County, and he ran 5 times in a row. At every single election cycle, the police were called on him. Some white neighborhood would say, there is a Black man at my door. And he just smiled, was polite, was firm, and kept on running. And during those races, and today, he has made 5 or 6 precincts in that super red, super rural county vote Democratic. So slowly but surely, with blood, sweat, and tears, we can turn the tide. But that is what it's going to take. And we, as spokespersons like us, and as county parties and as operatives, need to figure out how we can support people while they begin those runs. And, send a lot of young kids out to the battle line, or retired people.
Yeah. We had Dustin on the show the last time he ran. He has got an open invitation to come back if he runs again. He's definitely I loved him and his, kind of views and his just being himself. But yeah, himself. I think, that unapologeticness that you mentioned, I think that's so right. And Andy does a great job of this. He was on the, Jen Psaki's show, and I think that clip got shared around a lot. He just no, he turned it around. No, he's not going to be defensive about standing up for trans kids, right? He's what's wrong with you that you're going to be mean to these people, right? And I think he doesn't spend a lot of time on it. He doesn't necessarily bring it up a lot himself, but he is ready to defend what he has done. And it makes, he's so authentic. As we know that voters care about authenticity. So these fake political answers that are just message tested, to get you out of the way, or just to be disingenuous about your position, to obfuscate and move on. That doesn't cut it. And also he's right. And I think it resonates with people because, he's being kind and he's standing up for people that need to be stood up for, and not these bullies in the Republican Party that, the super duper majorities in Frankfort that seem to go out of their way to just be cruel to people. So at any rate, I think you're totally right. One other thing, and I'm going to throw it to Kimberly, I think, who's got a question for you. It helps to show up in all these different counties if you're bringing a big check. I think Andy also had that structural advantage, is that there was so much federal money coming down from the bipartisan infrastructure law. He got to stand next to the Brent Spence Bridge and say, yeah, there's not going to be any tolls when we rebuild this thing, because because Biden did it, along with, and he was there next to him, Mitch McConnell, who also made it a bipartisan infrastructure law. So yeah, while most Republicans were, lambasting the federal spending and we're going out of their way to say we're going to take back the Inflation Reduction Act money or whatever we're going to do, and he's out there just giving it out, and people are it makes it a lot easier to show up in those counties. People are going to show up. Even the Republicans are going to show up and say, yes, thank you very much. We appreciate this.
Right. The big checks.
Anyway, Kimberly, you got a question for Anna?
Yes, Miss Anna White's really quickly here. Rural engagement. So, what lessons should Kentucky Democrats take from Kentucky Republicans on rural voter turnout? What should they learn from that and use?
I think that we need to focus on the reasons people go to the polls. There will be, as you pointed out, there will be a lot more people in the next election. And the way we defeated Amendment 2 was recruiting rural women in particular and college students. We very intentionally, many small nonprofits and other entities reached out and registered those folks. you have to get voters to be interested in going to the polls. And so we really need to lean on our county parties. I'm seeing in Boyle, Greenup, Pulaski, Davies, and Boone, the women's clubs or the Democratic county parties are really getting voters excited now. They're talking about make a plan to vote, which is something we usually hear the day before the election. They're planning now. We also need to encourage people to go to the County Board of Elections meetings when they start deciding where the voting will be and how to set up the parking lot, how to set up the signage, and really make our voices heard and make sure that there are accessible places for people to vote. Don't do what Madison County did, which is have one as far away from the rural regions of that county as possible. So people had to spend more than an hour in the car to get to the precinct. It's about making our voices heard now and encouraging voters right now to get ready to go to the polls in May.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that youth vote piece, the new voters, college student voters, really important, and takes energy, right? It takes commitment, it takes time. It doesn't happen on its own.
Astounding, though. They paid college folks to go ahead and get other students to register to vote, and they paid them something like $200 a week for 3 weeks. It was such a minimal expenditure, and those kids turned out on Amendment 2. Nobody did that this past election, and we saw a much lower college vote. So for $1,000 per college across the Commonwealth, you can probably get more than 1,000 votes.
And how those votes are going to show up. They're going to show up for a party that cares about climate change. They're going to show up for a party that cares about women's access to health care. They're going to show up for a party that shows up for trans kids, right?
Yes.
That's not debatable. This is good money to get the right votes out for you.
Absolutely.
Anna Whites, thank you so much for all you do. Not just this evening spent with us, which is such a gift, but all the work that you do for all the nonprofits and all the progressive groups and all the politically minded folks out there who want to make sure they're doing the right stuff. And you are a huge resource to this Commonwealth. And if I had some award I could bestow upon you, I would absolutely do that. But I think all we've ever paid you is one flower delivery.
I love flowers. I'm always about the flowers. It's an absolute honor. Thank you, folks, so much.
Awesome. And I said, folks, that we would get done in an hour, and I lied. We have gone over an hour. I don't know how we did it with just two of us, Kimberly, but we definitely burnt that time. Anna Whites, thanks again. We are going to do our call to action because this is not just a talking heads on the interweb show. We want you to be active. We want you to get involved. We want you to do things that matter. So this, obviously we had Black Friday last week. I hope you did like I did and went out and got a hike in the woods and didn't set foot in a shopping mall, but maybe did some online shopping on Cyber Monday, or maybe did Small Business Saturday. But we just had Giving Tuesday, and I think Giving Tuesday is one of those that I like the most. And I'm going to encourage everyone to do it this week. If you haven't donated to a Kentucky cause, please do it. And I'm not going to even mention that Progress Kentucky has a secure ActBlue website if you want to make a donation. But I want to encourage you to support something that's close to home, close to your heart. I had a very compelling request from May Suramak. If you guys remember May, she ran down in Madison County for a special election, and she was on our show, and I'm so impressed with her. She's such a just committed community organizer. And I was very sad that she did not win that special election, but now she's working for the New Americans Initiative that Representative Nima Kulkarni started. And she's actually, paid staff to help take that organization to the next level. And it's helping, refugees and immigrants get registered and become active voters and support them in that journey. And that's phenomenal and cool. And I think it's phenomenal. So I made a donation there. I'd encourage folks to check them out. Kimberly, what's your favorite Kentucky nonprofit to support these days?
I don't know. So many.
There's a lot of really good ones. There's a lot of
some of them, are women's Democracy, Democratic Club, of course.
Emerge, or if you want like women running for office, Emerge does a really cool job.
True. Um, I think like the counties need more help as well. The county parties need a lot of help because most of them are not even able to really help candidates that are right there in their backyards. And then, of course, one of my very, very favorites that I do need to make a donation to is this organization right here, Progress Kentucky, for everything that Progress Kentucky does. This podcast every week, all of the hours and toil that Aaron Viles puts into it, Annabel, Nate producing, Dougie Fresh, Mr. Doug Price, that does so much thorough investigation to bring those policy pieces to us. Um, just all of us co-host on here, we do this as volunteering to make sure that information comes out for the community, for the people. And I think that this is a very good nonprofit to land some of your money because every penny counts. A lot of people think if I can't write $100 check, I'm just not going to do it. You know, if it's $2 that you have, it's $2 more than what Progress Kentucky had. So I would just say Progress Kentucky would be my top um, nonprofit organization moving into 2024. It's going to
Nice.
be my very top one.
That's awesome, and we're honored. I will say this: I think Spark Community Cafe in lovely Woodford County, they do a really great job, and that's where our own lovely Annabelle's conflict of interest is, because they seem to like want her time, and they pay for her time a bit. So whereas we are like not able to do that, but definitely support that group. As Kimberly said, we are all volunteers, so make the donation. It doesn't like get us rich, it just helps us pay our bills, like the streaming services, or having the resources do a little bit more in terms of our legislative tracking, our legislative engagement, because again, we got super involved with the election. We do not go away once the election is over. We are very excited to watch what's going on in Frankfort and hold folks to account, because there will be shenanigans. Mark my words, there will be shenanigans. All right, so thanks again to everyone.
Shenanigans on what? On steroids.
On yeah, all
Yeah.
the shenanigans, unending shenanigans on. And we covered a bunch of this last week. We know they're going to be doing they're going to try to defund public education and siphon that money off to private education for sure. We know they're not going to want to fund pre-K, universal pre-K, but we need that. We know they're not going to want to do anything to provide any exemptions to our abortion restrictions in the Commonwealth. We're going to need to fight them to make that happen. See if we can do some jujitsu there. But at any rate, we got plenty to do. I'm going to let Kimberly close us out and just Kimberly, great to spend some time with you this week.
I know, and I didn't get on your nerves that bad this week. That was a first. But first, for the disclaimer, as we always have to do, Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project, the Commonwealth Alliance Voter Engagement, otherwise known as CAVE, and we are also proud members of Forward Kentucky Network. So all of that is really, really good for us, and not just us. We are able to cascade it down to you. So our goal, Progress Kentucky's goal, is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. We'll be here next week. Yes, we will, at 7 p.m. Make sure you share this Facebook Live. And also, we are on YouTube. Share that. Share. We have got to get the algorithms up. This is going to be a very, very important year coming up. And we just want to say thank you, Annabelle, for this episode tonight, which was episode 141, I believe. And Annabel, let's say a happy birthday to her. She is now a legal age to have a cocktail. And thank you, Nate, if you happen to be watching tonight, because all of the songs, and you don't see us, but we're like in the beginning, we're dancing and everything. And he's such an accomplished musician and songwriter. So you can find more songs and more information about Nate Orshed, our very own Nate, at natosongs.com. That's NATO.com. And if you miss our live stream, do not fret, my pet. We are on just about every podcasting stream there is, Spotify, Apple, on and so forth. So, and if you go on there, please give us a 5. Give us a 5, please. It helps us so much. And so just make sure to share this. Share this with all your friends, tag your friends on this particular episode tonight. Is very important, what Miss Anna White has said. And it's very important what you say as well. So thank you for joining us tonight. We'll be back next week at 7 p.m. on the same day, same channel. And you know what? You made it through hump day. So do something nice for someone. Not only will you feel good about it, they will feel great. And we'll see you next week.